Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and of course PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, interact with us in any way possible out there on the interwebs, wherever you're at, listening to shows. We're probably there. If not, let me know. Wherever you get a podcast at. And, of course, follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast to stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our dope giveaways. I'm your host, as always, Travis White, a.k.a. Travis, on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Mike P-Pack. Mike, my friend, what's good? What's going on? And we've been fucking grinding some Left 4 Dead 2, baby. I'm not going to lie. That may be the new, like, at least for a little bit, the new crack pipe. Like,
It is, yeah.
Sitting at work today, I was like, I'm going to try to get a lot of this shit done just so I could be like, hey, so we playing some more Scavenger? Like, what are we doing?
What are we doing here?
Yeah. So catch me up. Left 4 Dead 2. Why the fuck are we still playing this game? How many years later? What, like 12, something like that?
Yeah.
Compared to when we got what is supposedly the new out there with Back 4 Blood.
Yeah, there's something about Left 4 Dead 2 that I'm sure if you've played, Left 4 Dead 2, and Back 4 Blood, you may have noticed that there's just something about Back 4 Blood that doesn't quite scratch that itch. And I'm not 100% sure on what it is, to be completely, totally honest. I can't really put my finger on it, but I can say that without a doubt, the group of guys, me, you, and Marshy, have been grinding the living shit out of Left 4 Dead 2, for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy that we've gotten back into it. It's one of those games that, like, we both admitted last night, like, I'll probably play this game forever. And it's like literally true. Like, in 20 years, I'll probably have to fire that game up just to play a campaign or something, because there's just something special about that experience with the way it was made. It just, it kind of marks part of the golden age of Valve for sure. And we've been having a lot of fun. There still is a little bit of a player base, even though rather notoriously the Left 4 Dead 2 community is potentially one of the most toxic per capita, because there's not that many people and everyone involved is pretty damn toxic. So definitely an interesting place to play video games, arguably not for the faint of heart. But with all everything else kind of just removed from it, still a great experience, and I've been having a lot of fun playing with you guys and getting involved with it again. And Adam is like full bore, like 100% balls deep in that hog,
into it. And he's one of those guys that, like, he's one of those when it comes to games, he goes on certain binges where if a game gets his hooks into him, like, that's it. Like, he's gonna want to play that. Like, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that in a way that, like, there's only one thing that could scratch the itch when you have it for him. And, like, that will be it. That'll be it. That'll be the only thing that, like, we're going to play that for a while. And then eventually, like, you'll fall off of it. But even if it is, like, something like that, that's just, like, primarily, hey, this game is best experienced with a group of people, he's going to go in there no matter what. Like, even if we're not available, okay, I'm going to grind this. Like, there's no objective. The gameplay is just so fucking fun. Like,
and he has no real warning either for when it's gonna be done. It's just like one day he just is done with that game.
Yeah, it literally the straight up, like, I don't want to play with you anymore from Toy Story. Like,
Sid drops the toy. That's Adam with every game he plays at one point or the other.
Right. No, definitely. But no, man, it's been fun playing that. Like, that's it's what you mentioned and we talked about yesterday. Like, it probably is going to be one of those games that I'll play forever, or at least like at bare minimum, it'll always be a valid option to play. Like, as long as we're able to physically get on that game and play it and like host our own games and things like that, it's a game I'm going to keep installed on my PC no matter what. I mean, and I take that back. It's almost 13 years that game's been out. I don't know why I was thinking that I'm getting Portal and Valve's release, or Portal and Left 4 Dead's release dates kind of flip-flopped.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those games that I'm still going to keep installed on my PC at all points, even though it's, we've been playing this game for, almost 13 years. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's almost like the Halo, how do I want to put this? It's almost like, with Halo, I can go in and play Halo 3, Halo 2, even CE, those first 3 original Halo games. I'm okay playing those forever, or at least like that style of arena shooter that I can jump in, play that. And yeah, maybe I want a little bit of variation to that gameplay, almost like subcategories of it, because each game is realistically a different take on the arena shooter. They're great in their own capacity, but each one is a very different game. It's almost like how people talk about Soulsborne games. Yeah, like Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Sekiro, Bloodborne, and then now Elden Ring. Yeah, they're all very much Souls-like games, and that falls into a specific category. But each of them has their own take on it to an extent. Like, Dark Souls 1 doesn't play like completely like Dark Souls 2. Like, Dark Souls 2 doesn't play exactly like 3, and 3 doesn't play like Bloodborne. Bloodborne's a much faster game. Sekiro focuses more on parrying than the other ones. Like, they all take different approaches to it, and that's why I think those games kind of stand the test of time, because they didn't necessarily break the formula too much. And I think that was more the thing of Back 4 Blood, that, yeah, I don't have an issue with, like, when they first brought up the card system, I'm not a huge, like, card component person, like, digital card component person. Like, I'll play games like, Gwent, or I'll play games like, from Hearthstone, like things like that. I'll get in and play, but I'll never get deep into them. And anytime I see that kind of rooted into a game's gameplay, or at least a main hook of it, that usually turns me off. And surprisingly for Back 4 Blood, that didn't do it. But at the same time, I think we were going into that so ready to just have, hey, I'm ready for Left 4 Dead 3. Like, that's basically what I'm expecting out of this. That's what has been pretty much, I think, lined up for a lot of people is, yes, this is a new iteration of Left 4 Dead without the naming rights to it. Like, that's what you're getting. Almost like the Callisto Protocol is, I don't want to say is one for one, but it is very much like, hey, this is a game very much in the style of this, of Dead Space. We don't have the naming rights for Dead Space. I'm the original creator, and I'm leading the creative vision on this, but I don't have the rights for Dead Space, but I want to continue that genre and that take. Cool, here you go. And even too, like, if we want to look back even farther, the issue with GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, whenever Rare lost the IP to GoldenEye and the licensing rights to that, they wanted to continue on the success of GoldenEye because it was the biggest multiplayer console game going at that point ever. We got to follow that up with something. So they made Perfect Dark, just being like, well, here's our take on what the next iteration of GoldenEye would be. And, hopefully we're going to see that later on with the new rebooted Perfect Dark. But yeah, it sucks that we didn't get that necessarily with Back 4 Blood. I don't think that game's completely done telling its story yet, or at least that studio with that style of game. But what I hope is, it really shows how much, and even too, like, and I'm going to get into it, I guess, when I start talking about what I specifically been playing. It even gets into more of the lines of, and we talked about this a few weeks back on the show whenever the one writer for the franchise came up. It just makes me want Valve to actually properly just say, I think it's time for another entry. I think it's time, and I don't want to say they're not focusing on software, because they are. They released Half-Life Alyx. They released Aperture Desk Job, which I'm going to actually talk about in a few minutes. But it makes me feel like this could have been handled so differently if it was just internally made by Valve as a Left 4 Dead 3. Just like I was saying, when I get into what I'm talking about, I played Aperture Desk Job because I got my Steam Deck, and that's a great, demo for that piece of hardware. The writing, the atmosphere, just getting back into that world within the Portal universe was just like, fuck, I'm just ready for Portal 3. Like, just give me Portal 3. So
I'm just hoping that, their take on it was because they were pretty radio silent about Back for Blood and everything. And I'm hoping what the angle they're playing is okay, they kind of whet people's appetite for that type of game again. Like, Source 2 is going to come out, a new CS is going to come out with it, a new Left 4 Dead, and a new Portal is going to come out with that new engine. I'm hoping, that's kind of what they've been waiting on, because, I'm probably delusional. Some people might be thinking, you're a clown for thinking that's what's going to happen. Partially, yeah. I would really like to see it. But
joke's on you. I already think I'm a clown.
Literally.
That's me. It's joke's on you. I do the makeup every morning.
Yeah, I'm like the new Joker movie where I do my own makeup. I know.
Just fucking smoking heaters.
Literally, I fucking know I'm a clown, but that's what I hope for. So maybe, just maybe, in the near future, if Source 2 does come out soon, hopefully it does, they have some new software on the way with it too, because that could be part of the problem is they kind of pushed Source Engine as far as they really could, and they didn't see a point to making a new game on that old software if they are going to be coming out with the new engine, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And one guy to look at a lot for his work is Tyler McVicker. Used to run Valve News Network, the kind of go-to unofficial source of Valve insider information. He was always the Valve guy, covering Valve stuff on YouTube and online in general. Does his own thing now, just a straight Tyler McVicker. He's really good to check into. He kind of has a lot of updates on, stuff that's data mined through various updates and builds of Valve games that are out now, like Dota and Half-Life Alyx and things like that have a lot of stuff in there that mentions upcoming Valve projects. I know one that's still in development is Citadel, that's like this RTS kind of iteration, but it's more based on, it seems like, from my understanding, it's not that they're not going to make software anymore, but the software is being built around the hardware that they're making. And part of me gets that. I get it. I really do. The success, Half-Life Alyx was super successful for VR, even though it pushed what VR was capable of and was actually that title. It sucks I can't play because I just can't fucking do VR. I can't stomach it for some reason. But it was that, hey, this is a reason to go out and buy at least an Oculus Quest or something like that. This is a reason to go get at least an entry-level piece of hardware to play this game. This is the reason. I'm expecting that when it comes to, the Steam Deck and things like that now, with how they're approaching a lot of it. Because Citadel, at least from what it sounds like, if sources and reports are true, that's going to be really built around the inevitable and what is, from what it sounds like in development, the Oculus Quest equivalent, or I guess I should say Meta Quest, since Facebook owns it and now it's rebranded as that, but the Meta Quest version of what the Valve Index would be, their VR headset, that it's able to do, individual fingers and everything like that. But it's going to be built around that and kind of shipped with that. Which sucks, though, at the same time, too, because, people like you, me, Adam, so many people out there who play a lot of PC gaming, Valve is intrinsically tied to everything they do, whether it's Steam, but more importantly, so many people have just fond memories of fucking playing Valve games. Valve was one of those from a development and software end that it was blind faith for a while. I was never a Half-Life person, but I'm a Counter-Strike person out of that. I'm also, a huge fan of Portal. Blindly, if they came out and said, yes, we're going to be making, Portal 3, I'd just buy it. just because
Mhm.
I know it's going to be good. Like, they have that power to do that, but there's just so little pressure internally put on them to do that it's just, when you're making money completely hand over fist, and you are when you think of digital platforms for games, Steam is it. Steam is the digital platform for games. So why would they even remotely think about, hey, if we don't have to do anything necessarily built around developing all this whole new slate of games, like, why would we waste the manpower, the money to do that, when we could easily make the money doing, from getting our 20% cut or whatever it is now from every game that's sold on here. And sure, yeah, we'll pop out one game every now and then. We'll still have divisions doing that within the hardware that we're doing, but it's clear that that is like third tier for what they want. And that sucks, because I fucking love Valve games. Like, they still hold so much weight, I think, to this day. The fact that why am I blanking on it? Now I gotta fucking pull up because I'm gonna go crazy. Fucking Team Fortress 2 is making waves with its player base, and people are demanding like fixes to the amount of like bots and cheaters that are in that game. Speaks so highly about like the craft and what's, the content that's there. The fact that people are still wanting to play this game, like, whatever it is, 15 years later, like, come on. Like, I don't know. It's frustrating. But like I was kind of hinting at earlier, and this is super early, obviously, on this stuff, because I just got my Steam Deck yesterday. But I've been playing around with it a little bit in between all the stuff in terms of what I've been playing. Still tinkering away with Red Dead 2, but getting the Steam Deck obviously kind of derailed that process a little bit. But played Aperture Desk Job. That was the true first thing I actually sat down and played. The first thing I installed and actually booted up was Oblivion, just because I was like, I gotta just make sure that I can have this game now physically on the go whenever I want. Like, I just have to make sure I can do that. And I did, and it works. And it works like 95% of the way, because it doesn't have native, it has native controller support if you plug in a controller, but for some reason it doesn't necessarily pick up. It's not like deck verified, so it isn't optimized to naturally pick up the thumbstick and button inputs, or it is to an extent, I should say. It's not, the menus aren't designed to pick up the button inputs for thumbsticks and face buttons. So pretty much, like, I think it's like trigger is like enter, and you have to use the right thumbstick as the mouse pointer. But once you get into a game, it works just like you would once you actually load into your save, it works perfectly. Which is just weird how, like, it's like 75% of the way once you get into the application, it works fine, just how you would think it would. But then, like, the small, like, minute, like, quality of life things are whatever. I don't expect it for a game that's how fucking old, 16 years old at this point. So I'm okay with that. I get it. But anyways, but yeah, like I was saying, Aperture Desk Job was the first thing I sat down and played. It's in and out, 30-minute, very much a hardware or a demo for the hardware that you're getting. But like I said, having just barely dipping my toe back into Portal's world and universe just makes me just frothing. I was like, the whole time I'm sitting there with a smile on my face, because I'm like, the humor's hitting. This is the style of writing I've been wanting to get to for quite some time again. Like, I'm just ready to get back into that universe and play Portal. And not necessarily, I have nothing against any of the user content that's created for Portal 1 and 2, or anything like that that's still being totally supported, and Valve's even, giving pats on the back to, and kind of giving them the green light to go ahead and do this stuff, and even, like, kind of co-sign on it. I'm ready to get that next iteration of that. And it just sucks because we're probably not going to, at least anytime soon. But besides that, yeah, just been jumping into Red Dead still. Like I said, the Steam Deck kind of derailed me, but at the same time, like, it's going to be nice now having that, because it will be the big thing. The reason I wanted to make sure I got it relatively soon, because my date kept getting bumped back from, I think it was like July 12th. I pre-ordered it last year when pre-orders went live. So I got it like a year later to the date, but I kept getting bumped back until like Q3. And I was like, honestly, the biggest thing I hope for is that I just get it before I go on my honeymoon, because we have a lot of fucking like plane or like flights and shit like that and layovers and stuff to get to Iceland. So like, I'm like, I want something, like, please, so I don't have to drag my fucking laptop or anything like that. I could just take my fucking Steam Deck if I want to, and I don't even have to take my Switch or anything like that either, because I could just fucking like emulate the fucking Switch on there and just import my saves and get an ISO of the fucking like Breath of the Wild or something if I really wanted to play that. Like, it's so much easier to just have this device. Now, outside of that, once we get past like trips and things like that, we'll see if I'm still like enjoying it as much, but because I feel like that's just going to be like, hey, this is going to be great to have when Molly's watching a show and I don't feel like sitting at the computer. I want to kind of hang out with her and continue what I'm playing, or when we go on trips and shit like that. Like, that'll be nice. Outside of that, I'm not going to choose to play that over my PC or my consoles. It's just nice. And, you know, is that price tag that, even though I have had money set off aside for it for quite a while, like, is that going to be something that I actually am like justified in purchasing kind of thing, like long term? Who knows? We'll see. But I'm excited to keep playing with it. It's early impressions. I fucking love it. It's really dope. It is exactly, it's almost like the Todd Howard "it just works" thing. Like, in actuality, it legitimately just works. Like, anything I've started up, I've booted up, I've had I love that you're actually getting, hey, this is an actual PC port, because this is just a handheld PC for the most part running Linux. Like, it's great that I can just open that up and I can go in, oh, something isn't running that great. Cool. I'm just going to bump into the settings, and like any PC game that I play, I'm going to go into the graphics tab and fine tune it so I can get 60 frames per second on the, whatever it is. Like, I think it's like a 1280, or I think it's like a, yeah, it's like a 1280 800p screen or something like that. So, like, you know, I'm okay with bumping down I'm okay with bumping down some, you know, texture quality and shit like that to get it to play like I booted up The Witcher 3 and was playing it at 60 frames per second in my hand. Like, that's incredible. I don't care like what anybody says. That's incredible to play that in your hand. No, it wasn't hooked up to the AC adapter or anything like that. That I'm playing at relatively good settings in my hand at 60 frames per second is over the moon. It has me over the moon, I should say. But anywho, that's pretty much all I've really been playing. Like I said, Red Dead's the main thing that I'm still getting into. But when it comes to like the past couple of days, just every night we've been just grinding Left 4 Dead too. Like, and I don't see that ending anytime soon. So like, I'm really still in the mood to keep playing that. So I'll probably end up doing that anyways. But anywho, Mike, let's head into our news stories and topics for this week. Kind of got a few ones. A little bit of a lighter news week, so maybe a quicker episode. But there are a few.
Find a way. We will find a way to milk this for an hour and a half.
Oh yeah,
and every listener out there will be like, "Jesus Christ, guys, get to the point."
I think everyone at this point like knows, like, hey, when I hit play on the episode every Friday morning or whenever somebody gets to it that weekend, they're probably going to see around that. Our sweet spot anymore is like, I've noticed, and it's not been like a thing that like I go out on my way to make sure happens. It just kind of naturally ends up being that way. Is like an hour 10 to an hour and 20. It's like right in that area. Like, we usually fall. There were a couple weeks in a row we were like hour 15 on the dot, like back to back to back to back. I'm like, I promise I'm not trying to time this. Like, I'm not trying to go for that. But I guess it's just like, it's funny you bring that up, because like I was even thinking about it. I think it must have been right around that point that I noticed. I'm like, man, we were like back to back to back, like right on the money. I was like, man, that's a far cry from like some of our earlier episodes when they were like 2.5 hours, or like,
yeah,
we just kept talking and talking, and it wasn't bad. It was just like, we just were like, yeah, we just want to keep talking about this shit. Like, we're just bullshitting. But from like, you know, a listener standpoint, me personally, I love when I have the beefy podcasts. Like, granted, my commute's long, so like, I like having that to listen to. I love to get a 2 to 3 hour podcast. Like, that is great to me sometimes. But at the same time too, if I'm just wanting to like dip in and out and listen to it while I'm out running some errands, like, people probably, on the other hand, don't want to listen that long. Like, and I think that's kind of why we broke it up into, like, I remember we started with our first ever episode was on MCC, and like we broke it up into multiplayer and single player episodes, like, because that game's just so beefy. Like,
yeah, I mean, you're talking about 4 video games rolled into one,
right?
And there's a lot to cover with those.
Hell,
with those
even
games,
I mean,
obviously.
realistically, even at that point, I think both Reach and ODST definitely was, but I think Reach was even involved in that as well. Like, they weren't included with the boxed copy you got, but you could buy them to be played in MCC. So 6 games.
So 5 games, or 6 games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, you know, like, it's gonna take a while. I'm not expecting anyone to sit there and, like, in our Oblivion episode, we like hyped that shit for how long? Like, of course it's gonna be like fucking 2.5 hours or whatever. Like,
and it still probably wasn't enough.
no, we still could have fucking sat there and talked about it forever. Anywho, though, we'll try to keep it on the rails for you guys a little bit, but we know how that goes. I'll end up veering off track and be like, you know what, fellas, and just fucking wreck it into a school or something. But anywho, Mike, let's get into our big topics for this week. One I wanted to go over with and kind of kick it off with that I think is really interesting because it wasn't that long ago and really coming up not that far in the future, hopefully to see the same success, but that we saw one specific developer known for one very specific thing find a lot of success in a completely different aspect. And of course, I'm talking about Respawn. Known for their multiplayer, you know, escapades with Call of Duty, and then now obviously Apex Legends, Titanfall back in the day, you know, then moving over to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and having such a massive success with a narrative single player experience really showed their flexibility. And it looks like on top of that, not just from the team that's working on the next, you know, Star Wars entry in the Jedi series, but it looks like Respawn's working on supposedly a single-player FPS game in the Apex Legends universe. This comes from Callum Patterson over at Dextero, as always, link in the description. Respawn Entertainment is working on a new FPS title in the Apex Legends universe, which also happens to be the Titanfall universe, and it appears to be a single-player game. Side note here, or they could just make Titanfall 3. You know, I don't know. Personally, you could follow up to one of the best single-player FPS experiences in the past 10 years. I don't know. You could just fucking do that. But I enjoy Respawn, so, and game development's hard, so maybe there's a reason behind that. Anywho, the new game is in development according to job listings that are hiring devs for the project. There are a few details to be gleaned about what kind of game it will be beyond it being a first-person shooter and single-player based on the description of a, quote, incubation unit for the new game. Respawn had previously announced that they were working on a new single-player game, although it's unclear if this is the same in-development title or another one. The job listing for a senior engine/systems designer on the Respawn website describes it as, quote, Apex Universe FPS incubation title, presumably a small team working on the game before it is ready for an official announcement. Little else can be learned about the game from the job description other than this particular role will look after, quote, a wide variety of systems, including collision physics, audio, what you would expect a systems engineer to work on, and other technical development aspects. Other roles for the team describe it as, quote, brand new Respawn single-player adventure. It's certainly possible that Respawn is building out a story-based Apex Legends game, given the rich lore already presented in the Battle Royale. There's also a small but not impossible chance that this game will relate more closely to the Titanfall franchise. Respawn will be keeping their cards close to the chest. There are already some confirmed developers on the team, though, such as Chad Barb, the technical director. Right now, we'll simply have to wait until Respawn is ready to reveal more. Apex Legends as a franchise has been a massive success for both the developer and publisher EA, with a mobile version of the game also just released in 2022. It's no surprise they want to continue to make the most of the brand. So, Mike, Apex, franchise that we both have played in, dabbled in, enjoyed, had highs and lows with it for the most part, but overall, I think enjoyed playing the game. And it's been such a very big, I think, Respawn in general seems to just be that anomaly of EA. When you think of the status of EA and when you think of, you know, perception from its consumers and just the industry in general, EA seems to have that you know, even just recently, they fucking shot themselves in the foot tweeting out, you know, trying to follow the trend of the there are 10 meme on Twitter and tweeted like there are 10, but they only play single player games or something like that. And it's like, okay, just say that you're biased towards multiplayer games because you want to just milk the shit out of people. That's okay. Like, that's fine. Like, we can ride that.
We already knew that.
Yeah, just be like, at least you're being straight up with it now, I guess. Like, and even like there were guys like Vince Zampella, like one of the heads of DICE, one of the most like famous names in gaming, especially within EA, like a tentpole like person within the industry right now, like responding with like the like hand to head emoji, like Jesus Christ, like what are you doing? Like, of course, like we don't even have to go into any of the stats that single player games are just as, you know, popular as multiplayer games, if not more at times. Like, it's just another reason why it's like I said, they just continue to shoot themselves in the foot. That when you think of Respawn, though, that is that anomaly, that is that outlier, you know, that is kind of pushing like, hey, we're going to release this battle royale game, sure, for free, with microtransactions, battle pass, what you would imagine, but not overtly down your throat of like, you need to buy this, you need to buy this, you need to buy this. Sure, if you want new, you know, you want new legends to get and stuff like that, cool, you could do that, you can buy that, but you're still going to get the base set for free. You don't have to pay a dime if you don't want to. Like, I don't think I've ever put a cent into this game personally. I don't think I've ever bought a battle pass or anything like that for it. And I've had, you know, whatever it is, it's got to be close to, you know, 30 to 50 hours out of this game, and I haven't spent a single cent on it. And it's been fucking fantastic. I've had a great time. So, like, at the same time, too, you look at them and you see the success they've had with Jedi Fallen Order and kind of bucking the trend that EA is most notably known for with multiplayer games, with microtransactions, with making these games live services that need to be on and need to have, you know, a live continuous cash flow in and out of them at all points to generate the most amount of revenue. That they seem to really be the kind of really flag bearer potentially of that sect of the industry, of the AAA, you know, third party narrative experience. Like, they're pushing out the best content for it right now. Like, arguably, at least when we're talking about, you know, that level from an EA, from a Ubisoft, whatever. But to think about kind of meshing those two together, it kind of reminds me almost of like, hey, we're finally kind of, this is potentially like building something that I think Ubisoft's tried to do. I think, you know, even Call of Duty and Activision and, you know, other studios have tried to do, but I don't think have the setup necessarily to be as successful as Respawn does with what they're trying to do with potentially being this single player Apex game or expanding their, you know, universe of this game. Mm-hmm. Do you think, Mike, like, one, what do you think of, I guess, just right up front, like a single player FPS game or just a single player experience, something new from the Apex Legends universe, so that isn't necessarily the battle royale that it's known for, the, you know, the main core experience, you know, does, I guess, it justify everything that people want, or the expanse that in the lore that this has, that, you know, does this have that bandwidth that they can say, yeah, let's take this out, let's try something new with it? Do you think that's what people are wanting? Or, you know, on top of that, I guess, too, like, do you think they're set up in the way that they could have that success of, yeah, let's have our tentpole franchise, take our experience and, you know, key assets from who are working on the Jedi team to implement some of the things that made that successful and take that into Apex? You know, where are you kind of at with something like that from Respawn?
For me, I don't know that much about Apex lore, to be honest. Like, I haven't looked at it at all. I know who the characters are, or the playable characters are, but I don't know like anything about their backstories or anything. So I don't know that I'm the best person to really give an expert opinion on if it'll work or not. I will say that the success of games like Doom, you know, the new iteration, I guess you could call it, leads me to believe that there is room in the space for something like this. Um, because, even though people like me who fiend so hard for a multiplayer experience that's a lot like Unreal Tournament, and the only way I can get that is Doom.
Mhm.
You know, multiplayer isn't really a focal point of Doom, and it never really has been. It always was there,
Mhm.
but it was never like, oh, we really need to make sure that we knock multiplayer out of the park. So with a game like that is so successful, I would say unequivocally that there's obviously going to be a lot of room for a single player FPS experience. It just has to be a quality one. And like you're saying, they've made it with Titanfall. Everyone that I've ever talked to that has played the Titanfall series
Mhm.
really enjoyed those games from a single player standpoint. So I would say that they have the opportunity to capitalize on people looking for an experience like that. What that actually looks like, is really up in the air to me because I just don't know anything about the Apex lore. I never will. I don't care to go and read third party. Like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
go, like, even when I played League of Legends, like, I'm not going to go on their website and read about the characters, read your 17,000 page, like, quote unquote fanfic, even though it's
Mhm.
not from fans, it's from the developers. Like, I just don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Nobody really cares. I mean, some people care, but like, I don't give a shit that Garen is Lux's brother. Nobody fucking cares, and no one's actually going to pay attention to that unless people go and actually read it. And people, by and large, they might, but I know me, like, I just don't give a shit. I know what the characters do. I know they do X, Y, and Z, and that's what I want, so that's who I'll play.
Mhm.
But I don't care. So what they do with it is really up to them. It'll be a brand new experience to me, regardless. But I don't know that they're going to make that experience for me because I don't know. I don't see myself really getting into it and playing it. To be honest,
Mhm.
I'm more focused on spending what little time I have gaming. In multiplayer experiences. Now, if it's something like Elden Ring where it just like takes the world by storm, then like by all means I'll get into it. But usually it has to be really special or something that I have a lot of nostalgia or memories with for me to get involved and spend some of my own time on it if I'm not going to be experiencing it with others like you and Adam.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's by all means that's justifiable. I mean, that's I think the beauty of what I think Apex or not Apex, but I think that's kind of the beauty of where Respawn is right now, that they have that ability, at least in my opinion, like from seeing how well they did Jedi Fallen Order. I mean, that was my game of the year for the show in 2019. It was my game of the year for that year. That seeing how they've handled Apex, seeing how they've handled the single player end of Star Wars, that I could see them and the care that they put in. And really, I don't think I played, or no, I did beforehand. I played Titanfall 2 way after it came out, but it was before Jedi Fallen Order came out. So I think it was like kind of like Christmas time, end of 2018, early 2019, something like that, where I played through Titanfall 2 for the first time on the campaign of it. And even then, I should have known, like, the narrative chops that Respawn has, like, they got it. Like, they can, the writing that they have, and I truly mean, like, I've played a lot of really good single-player FPS campaigns over the past, 10 years or whatever. And more so in the past handful of years, there's been some really fucking good ones to come out. I mean, Doom 2016 is hands down still one of the best overall single-player experiences you can get. Period. Especially first-person shooter. But in terms of an FPS campaign, I think, and I not really being, I don't think, for those who have played it, I don't think I'm being hyperbolic in saying, from at least the last gen, Titanfall 2's campaign is probably one of the best single-player experiences you can get. I'm not the biggest, multiplayer guy for Titanfall, just because that has never gelled with me that much. I didn't really get into the OG Titanfall, and I never really dabbled around too much with Titanfall 2's multiplayer. But the campaign, man, is out of this world. And I really would love to see how they can take that, because you look at these entities, like you kind of brought up, League of Legends with Riot, and even, now Valorant too on top of that. They have all of this fucking lore that's sitting there. And yeah, it's not for everyone. I'm not going to go out of my way and read fanfic like you're saying, or I'm not going to go out of my way to necessarily read the, in-universe, like, books and things like that. I'm glad it's out there for somebody. It's not for me, and that's okay. But at the same time, too, you're seeing why when you cultivate that stuff so well and you have universes like that, when you have companies like Riot who have done some shitty fucking things in the past, and that doesn't excuse anything. It's almost like just a side note, because we're talking about this. And I was laughing my ass off yesterday. Mike, you're a big hockey guy, so of course you're going to get this as well. But like, so many people kind of like hyping up the Evander Kane re-signing with the Oilers. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's a good deal. You know what? It seems like he's matured there. There's nothing to do in Edmonton, so he'll keep, he'll be staying straight and stuff like that. And he's really matured, I think, and blah, blah, blah. And I want to be like, yeah, good for him, I guess, or whatever. Yeah, he may have matured, but you also don't mature over, like, beating your wife. Like, that's not something you mature over. That's just, hey, I'm a piece of shit and I beat women. Like, you have sexual assault allegations as well. Like, I could see the, like, hey, I gambled on games, or, hey, I, had to file for bankruptcy or some shit like that. Okay, you got money problems or whatever. That stuff you can learn and grow from, but, like, you're a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
You're still a fucking scumbag. Other people don't get redemption stories from that because, I don't know, there's something, kind of an offshoot. It is just something about the hockey community is just so weird. Like, if you're a good player who complains to the officials because you're getting abused every game, you have this like stigma about you. But if you're like a woman beating piece of shit, like they'll just like forgive you if you play hard. And like, it's just so, they're really weird.
Right. You're out there getting battery charges and shit like that. And you're like, oh no, it's good. Like, it's just one of the good old boys. And it's like, no, fuck that shit. Like, fuck the dudes who are like, some of these kids who are up in playing juniors who are, at these billet homes and shit, like going off and just like sexually assaulting girls and stuff. And like just acting like it's no big deal or whatever. Especially like Canada's hockey, like, organization trying to sweep that, like, governing body trying to sweep it under the rug. Like, no, we're good. But anyways, yeah, offshoot to that. But like, one of those things that it's like, it doesn't matter. Some of these things are kind of like, you can't look past those things. And it's just like, that's what made me think of that. But it's just, you really like, with Riot, it's like, it's hard to really kind of look at it and say like, yeah, I this and that, but they're also shitty for like covering up sexual abuse and, all these allegations and whatnot. But besides that, they've handled...
Yeah, they're like live game, or their games, like in-game of Valorant and League of Legends, are like a safer space for people than their workplaces.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Which is pathetic.
And it sounds like
it goes to show...
It sounds like they have, granted, that's a broad statement across everybody that I'm saying as well. Like, that is very broad. Not everybody there is. It's select individuals that fucking are cancers that need cut out. And it sounds like they cut out a lot of that and done a lot of reform. And I think that's why so many people now are starting to kind of like, or at least in the industry, have started to kind of gravitate back towards them because, at some point, if those people are gone and there's people there who had nothing to do with that, it's like, okay, then yeah, what good does that do? But I agree with you, what you're saying, though.
I mean, yeah, that's the only point I was going to make about Rito is just like how pathetically soft their games are, like, in-game chat. And I'm starting to get a little bit softer in my old age where, like, I get it. Like, people don't want to get on the game and get abused, like, verbally or whatever. Or they don't want to sit there and just read a bunch of hate messages to it. But then also, I'm like, I have the same, I'm the same person who, if you want to fuck around in this find out economy, then that's fine. You can fuck around and find out.
In this economy? But yeah, it's like, But for companies like that who have such a dense amount of lore on their hands, it's not surprising when you see them actually articulate and handle it well, that you see them having success, like with having the Netflix show, like with having, Legends of Runeterra, and people just gobbling up that, not to mention now, obviously Valorant and the success that that's had. And, even recently, Shroud getting back in, like going over, hey, I'm coming back into the game, man, and I'm going into Valorant, playing professionally. Like, when you see like actual care being brought into there, like, it's no wonder that you see so much success when it branches out. And I think Respawn potentially has that with Apex. Like, people are very passionate about what goes on in that game. More so than I would say, like, there's been a fucking billion Call of Duties, but every now and then you get like a memorable character out of it. Like Soap. That's like one of the ones that like a lot of people kind of talk about. And like, there's a reason why he's been brought back now to kind of be within the new rebooted version of Modern Warfare. Like, there's a reason why, I guess. But like, outside of that, there's not many memorable characters. There's not many memorable, instances within that game. I think because, and granted, that could also be because of the annualization of it and yada yada. But when you see so many of, you don't see the success that Call of Duty has outside of it's just, hey, this is single prong multiplayer, where people aren't necessarily investing in the actual lore of the game. It's all there. You've got a fuck ton of it, but nobody's really investing in that long term. I mean, you're getting that with like World of Warcraft and Blizzard, but like even then, like they've been so just like ham-fisted about like, and kind of like meh about how they want to handle their actual properties within that, especially on the Warcraft end, where they have all this, they have fucking mountains of lore to go through and peddle, like, but there's nothing that nobody actually wants to actually like invest in, because it's all done as kind of cash grabs, where you see Riot and you see how well they've handled that. Like, I legitimately think EA could potentially have that with Respawn. And that's a lot to throw EA in there and say, yeah, like, I expect they can handle that because, EA has the financial backing. They've been very much like, almost to a degree of like, hands off with Respawn in a way of like, I'm sure there is a lot of like, hey, you have to do this, 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 and this, like, to a degree, but like, they've been very much, it seems like, hey, yeah, you could do this game, you could do Apex because it's bringing in all this money, and you could also do kind of whatever within Apex. Like, there hasn't really been a big push to like, hey, it needs this and this only, this and this only. Like, you're seeing a lot of different time content updates. You're seeing a lot of, obviously they're putting in more legends and stuff like that to make money, but at the same time too, there's also that's the same that every game that has those does, though. Like, every single game that releases characters in time like that, make them like basically OP as fuck, because they want people to be like, oh, I want to use that character because he's OP as fuck and I need to buy him now because he's brand new. And then after a while, they finally will update and like balance those characters out. But like, yeah, I agree. Like, I don't think that they've really acted as maliciously as other companies have with cash grabs. No, which is crazy to think about, because when you think EA, like, I think of instantly like Star Wars Battlefront 2 and how fucking diabolical that was. And them just basically like, yeah, you want to play as Luke Skywalker, that'll be either, 1,000 hours worth of your time, or you could pay like $500 and get him right now. Like, wait, what? Like, and that's not even looking at like Diablo Immortal in Blizzard. Like, I'm saying more or less just on a AAA, like, hey, I just paid $60 for this Star Wars game that is promoting I get to play as Luke Skywalker. Cool, I want to do that. Oh shit, I don't have the card for him? I can just keep buying packs for a 1 in fucking 1,000 chance to get him, or I can just keep grinding to eventually just go and unlock him and get enough free points, but that'll be fucking, 1,000 hours. Like, I don't know. Anyways, though, it seems like we're in a very different reality when it comes to how EA is kind of letting, almost in a hands-off approach of, okay, this is successful. They obviously have something going here, both single player and multiplayer, and the two prongs that they have. we're good, hands off, like, yeah, meet X, Y, and Z every year, but it almost is like, hey, we don't know what the fuck we're talking about. We'll let the people who do talk. Like, more people should be, and more things in life should be like that, I think. Like, if you don't know what you're talking about, that's totally fine. Let the people who do know what they're talking about talk and learn about that and then talk about it. Like, ask questions about it, but don't, like, well, I don't know anything about that, but, like, this is why it should be that. Okay, well, that doesn't fucking help anything. Mm-hmm. Anywho, though, so I'm excited to see where this goes. I mean, I'm excited to see what really Apex in general, because I think that's going to be the biggest test of where this franchise is and what's going on with it, where it's going to be in 5 years. And, it's obviously proven, hey, this is, there's a reason why they haven't touched Titanfall, as it's in the same universe, and this is far more successful than what Titanfall's had. But at the same time, too, I think that opens them up to the success that they've had with Apex to kind of go back into those corners. Yeah, it may not be a straight-up Titanfall game, but that doesn't mean that we won't get a Titanfall add-on to Apex Legends, or this side story or this expansion to Apex Legends that, yeah, it's $30 or whatever. Cool, you could buy it, and you get a 6-hour campaign out of it. Like, that's cool. Like, you can, you just unlock, it's Apex as a platform, and you can unlock this, and that's great. And that just builds into the universe. And that, to me, is, like, that's what I want out of a lot of these now, like, kind of entity pillars that we have in gaming. These franchises that, they are live service, but more of the service end is more than just like, hey, cosmetics and shit. Like, I'm investing into Destiny. I'm investing into whatever. And like, especially something like Destiny, like, it's cool that I can go in there. This season, there's going to be this mode, but also too, this season, you can go in there and there's a new story mission that's focused on this. And we want to make sure we're expanding the story this way. And you're getting a slice of life from this character this season. Like, things like that aren't just singly pronged at, oh yeah, I got new skins that I can unlock in the battle pass. Like, things like that. And I think Apex is in a really interesting position to potentially really work with that, given its size. But anywho, Mike, let's head on to our next topic I wanted to talk about. And it's about a studio that we're both really fond of overall, especially one of our favorite horror games, Until Dawn. But Supermassive has been acquired by Nordisk Games. This is from Marie Delarandri. I am so sorry, I butchered the fuck out of that. Over at gamesindustry.biz, go over there, check out Marie's work. She's a features editor over there. But link will be in the description. Go over there and check out her work, even though I butchered her name. Nordisk Games has acquired Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology developer Supermassive. The terms of the acquisition have not been disclosed. Nordisk has already taken a 30.7% stake in Supermassive last year, with the studio now becoming its third wholly owned studio. CEO and founder of Supermassive, Pete Samuels, commented, quote, "It's been a little over a year since Nordisk Games made an initial investment in Supermassive Games and our vision for the future. During that time, we have found that we share a lot of important values with Mikkel Weider, CEO of Nordisk, and his team, and we believe these values to be equally important to our existing commercial partners, who we will continue to support." Quote, "Having had such a positive experience over the past year, it wasn't a difficult decision when Nordisk wanted to explore increasing their investment. We have an exciting and ambitious growth strategy for Supermassive Games, and Nordisk Games ownership only enhances that. I'm hugely excited about where the security offered by the partnership and continued access to experience or expertise within Nordisk Games will take us next," end quote. So, Mike, you haven't had a chance to play the core yet. I have. I think it's a step in the right direction for where that studio needed to go and is going, where the Dark Pictures anthology has kind of been a little more hit or miss. But both of us have really been kind of heralding and been kind of these flag bearers of Until Dawn, given how much fun that game was. As campy and corny as it is at times, it's a fantastic game to sit around, pass the controller around, and have a good time with your buddies. But it's interesting to see them in this position and kind of continued, at least for a while, to be this hired gun per se, being this kind of standalone, and granted, now having investors included in that, and now being outright owned by Nordisk Games, but kind of being this hired gun of, hey, we're going to either get this Dark Pictures Anthology, published by Bandai Namco. The Quarry, published by 2K. Until Dawn, published by Sony. Like, kind of saying they were really good at, I think, picking up and saying, hey, here's what we're working on, and pitching it to people and saying, hey, you fit in our wheelhouse. I think we fit in your wheelhouse. You fit in ours. Let's make something happen. I guess looking at the future then, Mike, as somebody who is a fan of their games and is a fan of what they're doing, what are you hoping for, I guess, not only just Supermassive, and what you're wanting on them, where you kind of want to see them go next, and hopefully now, obviously, the big thing being, I'm sure, hey, we have financial support in case something goes, just ass up, and we, hey, our one game we put out flops, well, at least we know we have financial security that we don't have to worry about instantly being out of a job. And, I'm sure that is a main crux of why they're doing that. But in general, I guess, for kind of these hired gun studios we see a lot that kind of bounce around from publisher to publisher, what does a move like this, I guess, say for that? And, in addition to that of, is this the right move that you want to see kind of these, not independent studios, but these AA studios that are making these quality games, but don't have necessarily an overarching, entity over them? Kind of like, is this the move that we're going to start to see overall kind of being acquired?
Yeah, I think there has been a lot of precedent set recently within the video game industry business side of it that has led to smaller companies kind of getting gobbled up by bigger companies. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. I think that it's definitely a sign of like, hey, we like what you guys have been doing. And, we see a business need that you can fill. We can profit off of this relationship. And I think you guys will also profit off of us, because you won't be going door to door, kind of knocking on the door saying, like, hey, this is what we have. Are you interested? And when people tell you to fuck off, you just go to the next person. Or, I'm sure there's some times where maybe you just go to the highest bidder, where one company's like, oh yeah, we'll give you this. And it's like, well, that's not that good of a deal. Let's see what so-and-so can give us. And that saves a lot of time and bullshit. I will say, on the Supermassive side of things, I don't know how the relationship worked out with them with Sony and how they got to Until Dawn, because you can see that the skeleton of the studio that made that game is there. And when I say that, I mean, like, the Quarry, for all intents and purposes, was kind of like Until Dawn in some ways. Like, the choices system, all that stuff still existed.
It was very much more. I felt much more of an Until Dawn experience with the Quarry than anything I felt in the Dark Pictures Anthology, and that's not beating up on that. But I felt very much so that the Quarry was very much like a spiritual successor to what Until Dawn laid before.
And I will say that, like, from what I've seen from the Quarry, because I have watched some gameplay of it, there's a lot to like there. But I also have read a lot of reviews and watched some streamers and their opinions on it. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, it's better than everything else, but, and as a game studio, that's not really what you want, right? Like, you don't want people to say, well, it's better than their other games, but it's still not what I want. You know what I mean? Or it's not, it's halfway to Until Dawn is how I've seen some people explain it. Like, Until Dawn was a super special experience. I loved it. And this is not that, but it is closest. It's closer than anything we've experienced recently, which is the same sentiment that you've echoed just today. And for me, I just hope that this gives Supermassive the freedom and takes the stress off of them to make something that other studios thinks will sell, so they want to invest in. And then I hope that this frees Supermassive up to really truthfully roll up their sleeves and get into making a game, that's as special as Until Dawn. And I understand that, like, and I've said this before on this podcast, and I'll say it again. It's okay if Supermassive was a one-hit wonder. It's okay. Like, in my opinion, and some people may disagree with me. Some people even on the show may disagree with me. I think to be completely and totally honest, that for all intents and purposes, The Wolf Among Us was a one-hit wonder with Telltale Games, period. Like, you can enjoy the other games if you want, but, like, there's nothing that they've released that is anywhere close to the experience that A Wolf Among Us really was. And they might never, I know that studio has gone through some turmoil, so I don't want to, like, get off onto an offshoot about where that studio is going, and, we've talked about that, but it's okay if, like, some of these studios come up with, or wind up being one-hit wonders. But what becomes frustrating to me is, like, when the formula is there and they just refuse to dip back into it. Like, the formula for success is there. And if you are more worried about creative freedom than replicating success, that's okay. But, like, people are going to be kind of harsh on you because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to consumers or gamers when it's like you just completely ignore what was successful before and just come out with new things just because you want to work on something new. So again, I don't know what the relationship looked like with Sony to get Until Dawn to come out, but if they came out with a newer game that was a bit more like Until Dawn, I'm not the only person who would be more appreciative of that than a new IP like the Quarry. If it's going to come up short of what Until Dawn was, because as a quote unquote spiritual successor, I agree that, like, that game is more like Until Dawn than anything else. But, like, I would have to say that it's a regression away from Until Dawn, unfortunately. And I just hope that this deal somehow gets them into a position where they can finally get over the hump and make something that was better than Until Dawn. And it's going to be hard to do, in my opinion, in my eyes. Other people might feel differently. But, that's where I hope they get to go now that they've kind of inked this deal and they've locked it in. And now hopefully they're not going to have to worry about pitching something new to a different studio every week.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the most important thing out of this, and why I'm personally more happy to see these kind of moves be made. And it doesn't have to be fully bought out or anything like that. But just these more double A studios, or these, like I've been saying, kind of hired gun studios that have gone out and done some really interesting projects and different things that have either, maybe, metaphorically flirted with, a first party publisher like a Sony or a Microsoft or something like that. But have really kind of never had that true, like, umbrella that they're under, now have that funding that they can go out and they can make whatever they want and don't have to necessarily worry about, hey, we got to worry, let's find, and they can still find publishing partners. Don't get me wrong. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if there's still, if there still is a, partner that Supermassive finds out there with, 2K, or they extend their partnership with 2K, but it gives them the financial stability to, if they want to make a smaller experience, or if they want to even take maybe something like the Dark Pictures Anthology and keep that internalized and kind of just self-publish that. I don't know what the actual investment looks like or anything, or when that'll be disclosed, but, that might be something that is feasible then, that they can keep that internal, and they don't have to necessarily cut anybody a certain amount of, they don't have to cut out a piece of the pie for somebody. They don't have to worry about, shit, if we don't meet these expectations from an EA or Ubisoft or whoever, if we don't meet those expectations, we're losing a shit ton of money, and we are losing jobs, and we're just not going to make another video game. They have that now where they could turn and say, the investors are there to then say, or at least the investment group that has put forth the money into them, they can now turn to them and say, this is what we're doing. Or them say, or, the investment, the company that is investing in them say, we like you because you do this. We want you to have the freedom to do this and not worry about, yeah, we want it to sell, but we don't have to worry about selling 10 million copies of this game. Like, make what you want and do the best work of your ability. Don't worry about closing shop if this one doesn't hit. That's okay. Mm-hmm. Like, we've seen what you can do at your best ability. We want you to continue doing that. Like, having the financial security to just do what you guys do best and not worry about if it sells 10 million copies is more, to me, pushes the idea of more of you're going to get your best work out of this development crew and probably get to the point where you get an experience that is worth selling millions and millions of copies. So, that's what I want. It's just financial security is I think the biggest thing that everyone's really taking out of these that everyone is kind of getting out of these deals. And that to me is the most sensible thing. Not to mention, everyone knows, at least here in the US, of how just downright fucking brutal the economy is right now with, inflation being at an all-time high right now, and where it's going, it isn't stopping. Like, and just supply chain issues on top of that too. I didn't even think about that. Like, we're still facing all of these things, like knowing that you're going to have a place that you can continue to work at and not have to worry about, and continue your art and, what's going on, the craft that you're working on, and not have to worry about a day from, as soon as this game doesn't perform, we're done. You have that ability to say, okay, that didn't hit. Why didn't it hit? Let's go back to the drawing board and let's go back at it. Then you're instantly losing your job. So, to me, that's what I want to see out of these deals, I guess, long term. And that's what I'm hoping that we get out of Supermassive, because they're fucking incredibly talented. They're great. I just want to see them have the ability to make the shit that is great, that they're so great at making, I should say. Like Until Dawn, like The Quarry, like these things that they don't have to worry about a Bandai or 2K. I don't know how that relationship, either of those relationships are, but just blanket statement, worried about that publisher being like, hey, that didn't work out. Contractually, you were supposed to hit here. You owe us this much money now. And yeah, basically you guys are out of a studio now. Like, that's the shit. So, anywho, Mike, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, talk about everything we talked about today, whether it is the fucking Steam Deck I talked about for a while, Left 4 Dead 2, talked about a lot about Apex and Respawn. Obviously, what we just talked about with Supermassive, everything, all the nerdy shit we talk about. Also, too, I'm obligated to say Halo now. Halo. Even though we did talk about it earlier, but making sure we get our Halo quota in for the week. Where can people find you online to talk about all those things?
Yeah, you can find me where the Bluebird sings. Shout out to the birthday boy, Adam. At TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, and the second O is an X. Or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
Nice. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travlis on most internet platforms, including at Travlis_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_. You'd also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travlis_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me on any platform, really, but specifically on Xbox Live, you can find me at just regular old Travlis to play some video games. That's TRAVLESS. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, this has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and of course, PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, interact with us wherever you get a podcast at. And if we're not on there, let me know. I'll get us on there. And, of course, follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like our dope giveaways. And Mike, with that being said, it's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, watch trans, listen to the doctors. Black Lives Matter. And we will see you next week.